Hey everybody, welcome to lesson 12. We are done with all new material, and from here on out I'm going to talk about how to study and review chemistry, physics, and earth and space. So there's only 3 more lessons to go, including this one, that are going to match your Google Classroom quizzes. These next 3 lessons are going to focus on how to study, and it's not extremely helpful to you right now because guess what, you don't have a test to study for. And if we were in class, you would be using these test-taking strategies in my class, in Mr. Fan's class, and Mr. Sylvia's class to help you prepare for your STAR and EOC. But we're not taking the STAR or EOC, so all of the stuff I'm going to tell you about studying is useful for your life later on. And since I care about your life, I'm still going to talk about how to study and some strategies you can use to help you study in high school and in college. I'm going to start by reviewing this article by a couple professors. There they are. There's the actual information if you want to check it out yourself and read the whole thing. And so what these professors did at the end of the semester, because college goes by semesters, not years, but by the end of the semester, they asked successful college students what they did during the year to help them. One of the things the college students did is they plan ahead. They are never surprised by a test, an exam, a midterm, a paper due, because they always know when it is. And what do we give you to help you plan ahead? Yeah, it's like we thought of that. Another thing that successful college students do is they divide things up. They do not, and I know it's hard because all of us are procrastinators at heart, but they do not wait until the night before to start writing that paper. They actually space it out and again, plan, use your planner. They don't study for the test the night before, they study for the test over a week's worth of time. They are not distracted by their surroundings. Whenever you sit down and you're going to study, you need to make sure you have all your stuff with you. You have your book, you have your pencils, you have your calculator, you have all your stuff that you need. You need to make sure that you're in an environment that you can focus. So think about what you need to focus. Some of you need to drown out outside influences. So you need music or noise-canceling headphones. Whatever you need to manage your surroundings, do that so that you can focus on studying instead of focusing on other stuff. This one's really hard, but manage your feelings also. I know it sucks whenever you get a quiz back and you got a 0, but don't let that 1 0 throw off your whole game for this class. Yeah, you could have gotten a 0, but really, in the grand scheme of things, how much is that one homework assignment going to count towards the 100 points you can get in a class? 2 points? Big deal. You missed out on 2 points, and now you got a 98 instead of 100. So make sure you stay positive. You've done really good things throughout the year. You're continuing to do really good things. So make sure you talk about, maybe not out loud, but you talk about all the good things you're doing. Make sure you learn from your mistakes. If a teacher gives you feedback on how to make your papers better, you should probably do that. If you got a 0 on a quiz, you should figure out why. And a lot of you are actually doing that in Google Classroom, and I'm really proud of the fact that you are. Because you're sending me a message and you're letting me know, oops, I accidentally missed all this, and I know it should have been this, can I retake the quiz? The fact that you recognized what you missed and you figured out why that answer was wrong, I went ahead and gave you extra points anyway, because that's the whole point. So learn from those mistakes, don't make the same mistake twice, and use every opportunity as a learning opportunity. Okay, so now we reviewed strategies that good college students have. And hopefully you can start incorporating some of those into your high school and college life. Now I'm going to talk about some specific ways to help you study. And I think this is really important because a lot of times when we say you should study for your test, yeah, you'll take your notebook home and you stare at it for a little while, and that's all you know about studying. So I'm going to give you some very specific things that you can do to help you study. Now you don't have to use all of these strategies. Some of them may work better for you than others, but try them out, once you actually have to study something. Try them out, see which ones work for you, learn from your experiences, and use those to study in the future. So our first study technique is highlighting your notes. We've gone through class, we've written everything down, and now you need to go back and look at it again. And so instead of just staring at your page, why don't you do something with your page? Highlighting notes is an easy way to go back through and find the most important information. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go back through your page, reread your notes. You are going to find only 2, 3, maybe 4 words that go with each vocabulary word. Only pick the most important parts, because a lot of times when we write down definitions or you're writing down notes, you're just scribbling as fast as you can, and one definition may take up 3 or 4 lines in your notebook. Nobody has time to memorize 3 or 4 lines in your notebook. A really big key here is only a few words that should be highlighted. Do not highlight the whole freaking page. That doesn't help you. So here's my example. If I have a definition for the word proton, and I have 3 parts of my definition, I have a proton is positively charged, it's found in the nucleus, and it has 1 AMU in mass. So if I were going to pick the most important things out of all of this about the word proton, I would pick positive. I would pick nucleus, and I would pick mass. So if I can remember proton, positive, nucleus, and mass, that tells me the most important stuff about protons. Here's some examples from my 7th grade notebook. So, sorry, I'm not giving you 8th grade stuff. And it'll show you kind of what I mean when I say highlighting your notes. So first of all, I highlight the vocabulary word, and then I pick 2 or 3 words that go with it. Alright, study technique number 2, note cards and other memorization. So some advantages to note cards. Note cards are a really quick way to study anytime, anywhere. If we were actually doing the STAR test, I would want you to keep your note cards with you so that if you go into Mr. Sylvia's room and he says, okay, well, we have an extra 15 minutes, why don't you study something? Wow, you have note cards right there and you can study something. Another good time to study is whenever you're traveling. So when you're sitting in a car going from place to place, or you're sitting in car line waiting for somebody to show up and get you. You know, I know you're like, well, that's only 10 minutes, but yeah, that's 10 minutes of studying you can do. And that's 10 less minutes of studying you have to do somewhere else. To do a note card effectively, you're going to write your topic or vocabulary word on one side, and then put the definition or the important information on the other side. Every now and then I see people putting them on the same side. That's totally not how note cards work. Note cards are especially helpful for people who have testing anxiety, or the people who, whenever you show up to a test and you sit down and now you just forgot everything. Or you're the type of person that when you show up to a test, you'll be like, the answer's B. No, it's A. No, I'm gonna erase that. I'm gonna go back to B. And you change your mind a lot. So with the memorization that goes along with note cards, you'll have more information in your head and you're gonna be more confident when you sit down to take that test. To make some better and more interesting flashcards or note cards, you can always add pictures or use color coding. If you've already highlighted your notes, guess what? Use that for writing the info on your cards. And then you don't have to copy a whole long definition on your card. You have those keywords on the back of your card that tell you what a proton is. If you have a set of index cards, I would not recommend using the whole card. Index cards are actually pretty big, and none of you write that big. I would cut them in half and make little half cards, and so if you had 1 pack of index cards, instead of 100, now you have 200 that you can use. Sometimes you can't even find index cards, and right now, who knows what you have at home or what's in your backpack still. So use some paper if you need to. There's no reason you have to have an index card in order to make note cards or flashcards. And if you want to keep them together, you can put them together into an envelope, in a baggie, or you can hole punch them and just string it through with some yarn and tie it off. So I went searching in my house right now to make some note cards. I couldn't find any, but I did find this little bitty notebook stuffed in my desk drawer. I tore a couple pages out of that little notebook, and then I tore them in half. And now I'm going to use these note cards to make some chemistry notes. So I'm going to use proton, neutron, electron, and valence electrons are on one side, and then the definitions go on the other side. Notice I don't have full definitions. I have those keywords from my highlighted notebook. Alright, so we are done with why you should study. We are done with a couple of techniques of how to study, and now I'm going to breeze through all the chemistry you're supposed to know. Your Google Classroom quiz is going to cover all the chemistry you're supposed to know from middle school. From 6th grade, you're supposed to be able to know the difference between metals, nonmetals, and metalloids, and you're supposed to be able to calculate density. From 7th grade, you're supposed to know the difference between chemical and physical changes. And in 8th grade, you should know the structure of an atom. You should know that protons tell me which atom it is, and valence electrons tell me its properties and reactivity. You should know the arrangement of the periodic table. You should know that chemical formulas tell me what a substance is, and I can figure out how many atoms of each element by the chemical formula. And then I should know that chemical reactions make a new substance and follow the law of conservation of mass. Alright, 6th grade metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Metals are good conductors of both heat and electricity. They are ductile, which means they can be stretched out into wires, and they are malleable, which means I can hit it with a hammer and it's going to bend instead of break. They have luster, which means they're shiny. They're on the left side of the periodic table, and mostly they are solid. There's one liquid. Nonmetals are good insulators. That means they do not conduct electricity or heat very well. They are brittle, which means they are breakable. They are not shiny, they are dull. They're on the right side of the periodic table, and they consist mostly of solids and gases. Again, there's one liquid, nonmetal. And in between the metals and nonmetals on the periodic table, you have the metalloids, and they're literally kind of half and half. So they might be a good conductor, but breakable. Or they might be shiny, but an insulator. You will hear with electronics the words superconductor or semiconductor used. Metalloids are always found touching that little stair-step line on the periodic table. When it comes to density, this is really all you need to know. The formula for density is mass divided by volume, so if you have the mass of something and you have the volume of something, you can calculate its density. So, okay? Great. There are physical and chemical changes in matter. Physical means nothing new is made. I still have the same stuff, it just has a different mass or weight, a different size or volume, a different density, a different temperature. It can move from a solid, a liquid, or a gas. It can dissolve in water, or it can boil or melt. All of those things would be a physical change. In a chemical change, something new is created. That means I have a different substance with different chemical properties after the chemical change happens. Indicators of a chemical change, we have bubbles, a solid is formed, we have a change in energy, which would be heat, light, or sound, or a funky color change. Here's the main info you need to know about atoms. They're the smallest unit of matter, they're made of a nucleus surrounded by an electron cloud. The nucleus is positively charged and it has protons and neutrons in it, and all of the mass of the atom is in the nucleus. The proton is positive, found in the nucleus, and has 1 AMU of mass. The neutron has 0 charge, no charge, or neutral charge, also found in the nucleus, and has 1 AMU of mass. The electron cloud is negatively charged because it contains only electrons, and it has almost no mass because electrons are so tiny. Electrons are negative, found in the cloud, and have almost no mass. Here's a little picture. You can see your protons and neutrons are in the middle, which is called the nucleus, and your electrons go around the nucleus in the electron cloud. Alright, next topic. Any element is found on the periodic table, and it consists of atoms that are all the same type. Every atom of the same element has the same number of protons, which is its atomic number. This is important to remember because the number of neutrons can change, and the number of electrons can change. Remember, there's several words for those rings that go around in the electron cloud. They can be called orbitals, they can be called shells, they can be called energy levels. Remember, when you are filling up the electrons in an atom, you always do the inside ring first, So you'll fill up those 2 before you go to the next ring, and you'll fill up those 8 before you go to the last ring. All the electrons on the outermost shell, whatever shell is outermost, is going to be called the valence or valence electrons. That number will match the group on the periodic table. So all of the elements in group 1 have 1 valence electron. All the elements in group 2 have 2 valence electrons. Atoms are stable if the outer shell is full, and atoms want to be stable. Nobody wants to be unstable. Atoms will end up bonding to each other until the outside ring has 8 electrons, whether they're sharing electrons or stealing electrons. So here I have a Bohr diagram of an oxygen atom and a carbon atom. And so, looking at the oxygen atom, we have 2 electrons on the inside shell, and then we have these 6 on the outside. So since those are the outside, the valence electron number for oxygen is 6. Carbon has 6 total electrons, which means 2 are on the inside shell, 4 are on the outside shell. The valence electron number for carbon is 4. The periodic table is arranged in groups and periods. Groups are also called families. Those are the columns that go up and down. They're numbered 1 through 18, or you can look at the A and B numbers if you want to. And every element in the same group has very similar chemical properties because they have the same number of valence electrons. There are some special group names, but pretty much the only one you'll need to know is group number 18, the noble gases. Periods are the rows that go across. They are numbered 1 through 7 on the left side of the periodic table, and every element in that row has the same number of shells or rings. Elements have reactivity, and reactivity means how likely it is to undergo a chemical reaction. The more reactivity an element has, the more likely it is to undergo chemical changes, which means it's less stable. The closer it is to full, the more reactive it is. So the most reactive groups we have are the 1 valence electron, the alkali metals, and the 7 valence electrons, the halogens. The 1 valence electron group wants to get rid of their electron, and the 7 group wants to steal one. The least reactive group has a full outer shell. That's the noble gases. They are not reactive at all. Some groups in the middle that have 4 valence electrons are less reactive, but they still form compounds. Chemical formulas. And your chemical symbols are the abbreviations for the elements that are on the periodic table. They are made of 1 capital letter or 1 capital letter and 1 lowercase letter. Each element has its own unique chemical symbol. If there is a subscript behind the chemical symbol, that means that's the number of atoms of that element in the chemical formula. It's always written after. If there is no subscript, then that means there's 1. There's just an imaginary 1. You can't see it. Coefficients are big numbers in the front, and you multiply everything behind that. And if there's the parentheses, you use the distributive property to multiply everything inside by the subscript that's outside the parentheses. Here's a quick little picture. We have 2 atoms of hydrogen, so that's why it's H2. 1 atom of oxygen, that's why it's O with the imaginary 1. And when I put them together, I make water, which is H2O. Here's a different way you can see chemical formulas. And the chemical formula all the way over on the left is CH4O. If we were going to draw pictures of it, there's some pictures there in the middle. But notice at the end on the right side, there's a different way of writing methanol. And it has the OH separated. And so that OH is showing that that last hydrogen is connected to the oxygen and not the carbon. So it's written differently. So you can see methanol written as CH4O, or you can see it written as CH3OH. Still the same molecule, just written in 2 different ways. Alright, your last topic is chemical reactions. My definition of a chemical reaction is stuff plus stuff equals new stuff. Keep in mind, new stuff means a new substance with different chemical formula and different chemical properties is made at the end of our chemical reaction. We have 4 ways to know that a chemical reaction has happened. You have produced a gas, a precipitate, a change in energy, or color, but not always color because the color has to be weird. And keep in mind that you always have to have the same number of atoms on one side of the equation as you do on the other side. For example, we'll take methane and oxygen. Methane is CH4, oxygen gas is O2. When I combine the two together, it's a combustion reaction, I create carbon dioxide and water. If you count the atoms to the left of the arrow, I have 1 carbon, 4 hydrogen, 4 oxygen, and if I count all the atoms on the other side of the arrow, I have 1 carbon, 4 oxygen, and 4 hydrogen. I have made new substances with a new chemical formula and new chemical properties. Alright, so that is the end of lesson 12. We have covered habits that good college students have. We have covered a couple ways of how to study, highlighting, and flashcards. And we have reviewed very quickly everything you should ever know about chemistry for 8th grade. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe, everybody.